what you are about to watch, depending who you ask,
35 years before the scandal broke,
was one of the biggest scandals in college sports history,
35-30.
or the most disgusting cover-ups in the history of sports.
2-1, Penn State national champion!
No matter what you think, the world of sports is not as amazing, magical, or family-friendly as you may think. From steroid scandals to assault cases to cheating.
Did you ever take banned substances to enhance your cycling performance?
Yes.
This story may take the ultimate prize. While researching the story, I wanted to shed light on the story of a man who did these terrible things. And now, I think there's a little bit more to the story than most people know.
Former Penn State coach Jerry Sandusky has been sentenced to prison for the rest of his life.
He sexually abused 8 boys under a 15-year span.
The university had sent out a memo yesterday saying Paterno would not address the allegations surrounding his former defensive coordinator, Jerry Sandusky, at today's news conference. Will not coach next season, and that the university is currently planning his departure.
I think a lot of it was the media. I think Jerry was found guilty before he ever went to trial.
Welcome to World Sports Documentaries, where we do videos on the dark side of sports. And this is the dark side of Penn State. February 9th, 2001, 9:30 p.m. A 28-year-old graduate assistant at Penn State University was about to notice something that was going to rock the entire country. He decided to put some newly purchased sneakers in the football building lockers. The moment he enters the shower area, he hears a rhythmic sound. As he gets closer and closer to the showers, the sounds get louder. He then peeks into the showers and he notices a 67-year-old man showering with a 10-year-old boy. And what he initially testified was that the old man was exploiting a child to his needs. That man in the shower was none other than Jerry Sandusky, a retired assistant coach for the Penn State football team. Now put yourself in the shoes of the graduate assistant who witnessed this evil incident. What would you do? Raise this issue with the higher authorities in the university? Notify the police? Well, that's exactly what happened.
Now, Sandusky was charged on Saturday with 40 counts of sexual abuse.
If that was the case, then this story should have ended right there. But it didn't. The name of the graduate assistant was Mike McQuarrie. After witnessing this unacceptable incident, he decided to call his father for some advice, who later recommended him to contact head coach Joe Paterno. The next morning, Mike contacts Paterno for a meeting. And within a few hours, they both meet at Paterno's house, where Mike explains the entire story. Here's what he experienced. Mike had multiple scenarios of what happened. First, he states of hearing slapping and sexual noises in the showers, leading to seeing a man and a little boy engaging in intercourse, and then Sandusky leaving moments later with a towel on. After a few days, Joe Paterno does eventually tell the authorities about this situation. But the real problem lies if that was enough.
Penn State head football coach Joe Paterno met his legal requirement when he relayed to university administrators that a graduate assistant had seen former football assistant coach Jerry Sandusky attacking a young boy in the team's locker room shower in 2002.
When Paterno was made aware of one alleged incident, he reported it to campus authorities, but in the eyes of so many, that was not enough.
But Pennsylvania State Police Commissioner Frank Noonan also questioned whether Paterno had a moral responsibility to do more.
Now, after 9 days of Mike leaving hopeless and confused about the future of that little boy, Mike receives a phone call from then athletic director Tim Curley, in which he is told to meet again at the Paterno's house and explain the story in detail in front of the vice president, Gary Schultz. Finally, Gary and Tim describe the same story to Graham Spanier, the president of the university. I mean, we finally get some justice, right? I mean, the story finally got to the president of the university. He's going to lay down the law. Well, here's the consequence. Jerry was directed to wear shorts in the shower and never to use the Penn State athletic facilities with young people, and was also prohibited from bringing any children into the Lash building. So what did he do? Well, turns out he was not banned from operating summer camp at Bayron Satellite Campus of Penn State. So from 2002 to 2008, he exploited his victims as he was daily in contact with boys from 4th grade to high school. Surprisingly, the shower wasn't the first time the university officials came through with the incident, because in 1998, Penn State police received a report from a child's mother, in which she clearly described that her son came home with his hair wet. When the detectives conducted the investigation, the child explained Jerry's horrible habit of having a shower with the boys. As a result, the furious mother requested the detective to take immediate action against Jerry. However, this case never came forward because the director of the university, Tim Curley, told the police to drop the case. On top of that, Jerry proudly admitted that he not only showers with other boys, but also argues to continue this behavior in the future. Still, no action was taken against him. This obviously shows that the officials cared more about the university's reputation than helping the little boys. I'm not even sure how far back this history goes, but there was a non-profit organization that would be the core of this mess. In 1997, a non-profit organization was founded. An organization for underprivileged youth, providing help for at-risk children and support for their parents. This charity youth program served as many as 100,000 children annually. They served about 200,000 kids in 1989 to more than 300,000 in 2010. This nonprofit was called the Second Mile. And as you would have probably already guessed, all of Jerry's victims were from the Second Mile. Now, what you're going to hear can make you feel uncomfortable, as what's coming next are the stories of Jerry Sandusky's victims. Please feel free to skip ahead if you feel uncomfortable with hearing stories of SA and molestation. Victim number 1. This child met Sandusky from his Second Mile camp, located on Penn State University Park campus, in 2005 or 2006. During the 2000 track season, Sandusky began spending time with Victim 1 weekly, even staying overnight at Sandusky's residence in a bedroom in his basement. Sandusky started to slowly lure this innocent boy in, taking him to college sporting events, Philadelphia Eagles games, and preseason practices. Sandusky then started to shower the boy with gifts.
Sandusky soon targeted him, showering the boy with special attention, pulling out of school during the day, sleepovers at his home on weekends.
Now this is where it starts to get graphic. Victim number 1 stated that Sandusky had a routine of coming into the basement room during bedtime and rolling under him where he can see face to face. Sandusky would then run his arms up and down his back and crack it.
At first he would kiss me on the forehead goodnight. Then it came to kissing me on the cheek and rubbing my back, pulling me on top of him and cracking my back. More than once. I kind of thought he sees me as family, and this is just what his family does.
This became Sandusky's bedtime ritual with him, until it started to get more and more worse. Sandusky starts to blow in his bare stomach, then it slowly grows into a kiss on the mouth. Being obviously uncomfortable with this, he would try to hide in the basement to avoid Sandusky. Eventually, he would have to perform oral on him. Victim 1 was only 11 to 12 years old when he first met Sandusky. Summer of 2000. Victim number 3 met Jerry Sandusky through the Second Mile during his second year in the program. Jerry Sandusky began to slowly invite him to go to places with him. Sandusky would also invite him to come to his house to have dinner, walk the dogs, and to hang out. But Sandusky would also take him to the Penn State football games, Haluba Hall, which is a practice facility, to the gym. The gym is where things start to take a turn for the worse. At the gym, Sandusky and Victim 3 would work out together and take showers. Victim 3 obviously felt weird and uncomfortable showering with Sandusky, so he would choose a further shower from him. But Sandusky would make Victim 3 feel bad about showering at a distance away from him, which made Victim 3 have to move closer and closer. And that's when Sandusky initiated physical contact with Victim 3 by patting him, rubbing his shoulders, washing his hair, and giving him hugs from the back. Victim 3 would also sleep in the same basement as Victim 1, but he would experience the same disgusting acts as Victim 1 as well. Sandusky would give him shoulder rubs, he would blow on his stomach, tickle him, and Sandusky would touch his private parts. Victim 3 was only in 7th grade when he met Sandusky. The abuse kept on going on for years, until one day in 2008, mysteriously a teenager decided to raise his voice against Jerry.
His allegations against the former Penn State football coach triggered the investigation that led to Sandusky's trial and his sentence of life behind bars.
Turns out, Jerry had molested him since the age of 12. Well, thanks to this teenager, other victims had come forward about their abuse, as a number of victims shared their part of the story. This convinced the grand jury to initiate their investigation under Pennsylvania Attorney General Corbett. When the news about the investigation went public, the university faced a lot of pressure on its reputation. This, in return, caused the Penn State Board of Trustees to fire all of the officials involved in this case. And amongst them was Joe Paterno.
Paterno caught up in a scandal involving his former defensive coordinator, Jerry Sandusky.
Legendary football coach Joe Paterno may be forced out by Penn State because he did not do enough.
This is a tragic end to a great coaching career. This is a tragic end to a great coaching career that should end.
Joe Paul is hiding behind the letter of the law instead of the intent of the law.
He is in a very difficult situation because even though he did what he was supposed to do in terms of his position, it's not feeling right because he is the king of that program.
Paterno was considered the most victorious coach in NCAA history. During his leadership, he led Penn State Lions in winning 409 games. The firing of Joe Paterno did not sit well with the students of Penn State.
Joe Paterno is no longer the head football coach, effective immediately.
I'm really upset about the whole situation.
That's when the students came pouring into the streets here downtown in protest, many carrying signs saying, "We love Joe Pa."
They started to feel that their head coach was intentionally being targeted for Jerry's crimes. What Joe Paterno says next starts mayhem at Penn State. Paterno issued this emotional statement.
In a statement today, Paterno called the situation a tragedy and a great sorrow in his life, and with hindsight, he wishes he'd done more.
On November 9th, 2011, around 10,000 people gathered near the university to support Paterno. Outraged by the decision, news vans were flipped and more than $200,000 worth of public property was damaged. But right after this, they knew they were in the wrong. Maybe Joe Paterno didn't do the right thing. The Board of Trustees openly stated that Paterno failed in his leadership by not informing the police about Jerry's evil practices. When NCAA President Mark Emmert conducted their part of the investigation, they also found the officials responsible for their actions and imposed a $60 million fine.
The NCAA is imposing a fine of $60 million. This amount is the equivalent of 1 year's gross revenue of the football team.
Not to forget, when the grand jury declared its final decision, thousands of students realized the mistake they had committed on the day of the protest. Jerry Sandusky was arrested of child SA in November of 2011. Then in June of 2012, he was found guilty on 45 of the 48 counts against him. And then Jerry was sentenced to a maximum of 60 years in prison. President Graham Spanier was sentenced to 12 months in prison with only a fine of $7,500. While Vice President Gary Schultz and Athletic Director Tim Curley were only sentenced to 23 months in prison and only a fine of $5,000 each. And on top of that, Joe Paterno's statue was removed from Penn State's Beaver Stadium.
I feel that the statue means, it's sadness now.
Before you walk by, it was a happy moment, and now you walk by and it's a sad moment.
If you just remember the statue, it's for what he done good. He made one mistake, couple mistakes, fine.
He's an amazing person. That's all I can say. He's a guy that I looked up to in so many ways, and many of my teammates, past teammates at Penn State have looked up to.
Wait a minute. The math on this story doesn't add up. It was because of that firing of Joe Paterno.
Now they say there are three sides to every story. Your side, my side, and the truth. What you watch until now has been the mainstream narrative and possibly the true narrative side to the story. But what if I told you there was another side that most people didn't know? When I was researching this case, I found a website called The Framing of Joe Paterno, written by John Ziegler. And what I found was the most interesting thing I've seen in a while. This site presented an invaluable perspective that is very different from the usual perception to the case. Before I go on, just a disclaimer, I'm not claiming that this is the whole truth. This is just another angle to consider when you make your own truth of the story. Now, from the words of John Ziegler himself, he bases the Penn State case on two pillars, two different people. Without these two people, this case would have never convicted Jerry Sandusky. Look at this photo. Now, take a closer look. A photo of a man where he wraps his body with money. Now look at these photos. These were all written by the same person as well, engaging in a heated argument online and making some wild threats. This person was the mysterious teenager who was the first to come out with the abuse. February 2024, the same teenager, now fully grown adult, instigated himself in a fight with other people while drunk by threatening to assault another man's girlfriend. Well, this didn't end too well for him. He ended up getting stabbed with a pocket knife. According to his mother, he needed surgery. Then in April 2024, he was also arrested for drinking under the influence. This person is the beloved victim number 1, Aaron Fisher.
Former Penn State football coach Jerry Sandusky may never have happened if not for this brave young man. Aaron Fisher was the first to accuse Sandusky of being a monster.
And he is your first pillar. You might be thinking, well, he should enjoy his money. There's no amount of money on this earth that can be enough for the mental and physical nightmare he went through. And he's just acting this way because of the mental toll he has been through. Hey, you know what? You might be right, but let's dig a bit more. Fisher first accused Jerry Sandusky of SA and said that the abuses were for 3 years starting from the age of 11 years. Sounds pretty serious, right? However, there was hardly any physical evidence. Fisher's testimony? It has so much varied data. In the 2012 trial, he presented 4 different timelines, surprisingly with no sex in the first version. During his first police interview about Sandusky, he was asked if he ever touched around his private area, and Aaron denied. The police then asked if there was any oral events. Again, Aaron denied. Then Fisher came forward with his book, Silent No More, to detail how Sandusky would touch him during workout and shower times, to which he showed uncertainty and confusion during his first police interviews. Sometimes he described the abuse vividly, but sometimes his description was rather unclear. He was also unable to testify in front of the grand jury twice. This scandal has raised so many issues as to what exactly occurred and who is telling the truth. Fisher's story evolves so much between the beginning and the ending that one might get lost. This contradiction dealt a blow to the prosecutor's case to a significant degree. His friends and even those who used to trust him began perceiving him as one who tends to lie and fabricate incidents.
There was an interview, I don't know if it was ABC or something like that. He was talking to a guy and he was saying he was being harassed nonstop in school. He was cutting himself.
I was extremely suicidal. There was numerous amount of times that I've actually tried. I wore long sleeve shirts because I cut myself. I did a whole bunch of things that I wouldn't have normally done.
But I know for one, he never had any cuts. Not that I've ever seen, not on his arms or anything. And this was a guy that, kind of prided himself on his body. Because he was a sprinter, I think he holds one of the records for our state, something like that. But I don't think he would do that. Plus, he's always made fun of people for self-harm.
In early 2009, Aaron dated a younger girl in his neighborhood. This girl and her brother contacted John Ziegler and stated Aaron is lying about Sandusky. And another man came out. His 2 sons were friends of Aaron's. Aaron crashed a car with his 2 sons with him. And here's what the father had to say.
It was most definitely his fault. He was doing about 65 in a 25.
Oh, okay.
It said in the police report that he was doing 55. Bystanders were there, told me he was doing about 70. or more. I asked him if he would pay to have Theron's scars removed that he put. And I also told him he almost killed him. And he said, oh, I did not almost kill him. And you guys don't want me hanging out with him anymore. So he's not my friend, and I'm not giving you nothing. You can all just go to hell.
His teachers also didn't have the nicest things to say about Aaron to investigators. A history teacher of Aaron, Scott Baker, said, Aaron would constantly lie and scam. Another teacher, Ryan Veltri, said Aaron was untruthful, conniving, and would blame other kids to save himself. Even his next door neighbor had something to say.
How this community views Aaron and his story.
That he's a liar.
You're confident about that?
Yeah.
What degree of confidence do you have that Aaron's lying about his story? Scale 1 to 100%.
100%.
And why do you think people have come to that conclusion about Aaron in his neighborhood?
Because of the way he acts since everything.
Which is what?
That he's still arrogant and acts like nothing ever happened.
He doesn't act like a victim of abuse. No. He's very arrogant, very cocky.
Right.
He's been threatening people, that he's been vandalizing your cars.
I've had an acid-like substance poured on the hood. I've had scratches. My gas cap completely removed and taken. He actually drove by, slowed down, laughed, and then drove off really fast.
Aaron Fisher did?
Yeah, in his blue Mustang. Next day.
And you've seen Aaron drive past where you were several times since this occurred, correct?
Right. Not just here, where I've been.
And Dawn, his mother as well, right?
Yep.
She saw your damaged car at a gas station and said what?
Nice car, faggot.
The state police have been in touch with you, correct?
Correct.
And do you think they believe it's Aaron?
Yes.
As a matter of fact, they think that he's intimidating a witness in a criminal case.
Correct.
And by the way, one time he left a note, or somebody left a note.
Yes, that I need to quit talking to certain people and my stuff will look better.
What about his friends from Second Mile? After staying there for 3 years, he should have at least one friend. He does have one friend. Or should have had. Because there was this one other boy who stayed at the same place where Aaron stayed, in Jerry Sandusky's house. More specifically, in the same basement, same bedroom, and on the same bed. Aaron previously stated he stayed at Sandusky's house every weekend from 2005 to 2008. And the other boy, he said the exact same thing.
How often did you go to his house? Victim 9 said every weekend. Did you stay the whole weekend? Yeah. You would stay from Friday night until Sunday? Victim 9 said yes, until I was 15 or 16. In 2005, I was 12. Amendola then says, so you're telling us today, between the time you were 12 and the time you stopped going, when you were 16 in 2009, you were there virtually every weekend? He says yes. Were any of those kids there almost all of the time like you were? He says no. You were there usually by yourself? Yes, usually by myself. Did you usually sleep downstairs in the basement? Yes, it had a waterbed.
But the weird thing is, they had never met each other before. This boy is another victim in the case, Sebastian Payton. Similarly, Sebastian Payton accused Sandusky of abusing him, but could not recall the abuse until he testified in court. Everything I stated about Pillar 1, Aaron Fisher, could just be a coincidence. Maybe Aaron was so traumatized from the abuse that he couldn't testify it, and maybe the people who spoke out against him were just speaking out of envy. But Pillar 2.
He claims he witnessed Sandusky sexually assault a boy as young as 10 years old in a football locker room shower. McQuarrie originally testified the abuse took place in March of 2002.
After this incident, McQuarrie immediately relayed the incident to his father, asking for advice. His father then told him to contact Joe Paterno. The very next day, Mike contacted and scheduled a meeting with Paterno. This would make the meeting between them March 2nd, 2002. Reason I bring this up is because during the investigations, emails came to light saying the meeting was on February 10th, 2001. This would make the incident February 9th, 2001.
McQuarrie originally testified the abuse took place in March of 2002. Prosecutors recently moved the date to February 2001, raising questions about McQuarrie's memory.
This is very damaging to Mike McQuarrie's testimony because the jury's going to be asking itself, if Mike McQuarrie, who has no dog in this hunt, is making up a story, could these other witnesses be making up a story as well?
But what if I told you even this date could be wrong? In 2017, a book was published, The Most Hated Man in America, Jerry Sandusky and the Rush to Judgment. This book was written by an acclaimed science writer and Harvard alumni Mark Pendergast. According to his research, he states that the most plausible date that this event could have happened would be on December 29, 2000. Well, some of you are possibly thinking, maybe Mike McQueary has a bad memory. But this wasn't the only thing McQueary got wrong. He told the court, "I see in the mirror Coach Sandusky standing behind a boy propped up against the shower, with the showers running, right up against his back with his front. The boy's hands up against the wall." Right after this incident, Mike McQueary's father, John McQueary, contacted an employer and also friend, Dr. Jonathan Drenove, a nephrologist, to help out with what Brian experienced. Here's an excerpt from Pendergast's book. Drenove attempted, using the diagnostic and interviewing skills that he used with patients, to get a clear description of the scene that had so upset his friend's son. Drenove was unable to get Mike McQueary to put into words anything sexual he had seen, in spite of asking several times. But what did you see? McQueary explained that he had seen a boy in the shower and that an arm had then reached out to pull him back. Drenove asked if the boy had looked scared or upset. No. Did Mike actually see any sexual act? No. McQueary kept returning to the sexual sounds. If we're to take it as truth, then Mike McQueary put an innocent man and legendary coach into prison. According to this next excerpt, upon the advice of his father and Dr. Drenove, Mike McQueary eventually took his concerns to legendary head coach Joe Paterno at his home. Apparently, because Mike McQueary did not actually witness anything sexual, they did not suggest he contact the police, nor did they feel called upon to do so. Again, if that excerpt is true, then maybe the students were right to be upset. A beloved legend that belonged to their school was thrown into prison, left to die. These two men, as John Ziegler had said, were the pillars of convicting Jerry Sandusky, as they were the major events that brought this case to light. But then, there should be one more pillar, the event that started all of this.
Finally found victim number 2, the boy that former Penn State assistant coach Mike McQueary said he had spotted in the campus showers with Sandusky.
The victim we know now as Shower Boy, victim number 2, where was he in all of this? Would his statement put all of this to rest? Well, you tell me. On November 9th, 2011, victim 2 walks into attorney Joseph Amendola's office. Initially, the interview was standard. Victim 2 was talking about his childhood and career. But attorney Joseph Amendola asked this question: did Jerry ever touch you in a manner that you felt to be improper, or cause you to feel concerned about him invading your space? His answer: never ever did anything like that occur. The attorney keeps asking questions about Sandusky doing anything inappropriate to him, but he denies firmly. He even answered with this: never in my life with Jerry did I ever feel uncomfortable or violated. I think of Jerry as the father I never had. Victim 2 finally adds, I invited Jerry and Doty to my wedding. Why would I ask Jerry, my father figure, at senior night? Asked Jerry and Doty to be at my wedding, and the school asked me to ask Jerry to speak at my graduation, which he did, if there was a problem. But the final nail in the coffin was that victim number 2 remembered exactly what happened during the shower incident. He said, this particular night is very clear in my mind. We were in the shower, and Jerry and I were slapping towels at each other, trying to sting each other. I would slap the walls and would slide the shower floor, which I am sure you could have heard from the wooden locker area. While we were engaged in fun, as I described, I heard the sound of a wooden locker close, a sound I have heard before. I never saw who closed the locker. The grand jury report says Coach McQueary said he observed Jerry and I in sexual activity. This is not the truth, and McQueary is not telling the truth. Nothing occurred that night in the shower. And just like that, the 3 pillars supporting Jerry Sandusky's and Joe Paterno's conviction and arrest fall apart. But do you think Jerry and Joe are truly innocent? What about the other victims? Were they telling the truth, or were they only there for the money? This story is one for the ages, but we'll never know what truly happened. This video aims to present both sides, but the third side? That's a mystery. Maybe you have your own thoughts. Let us know what you think in the comments below.